Welcome to our Lunch and Learn on predatory publishing. I am Erica Wright, and I'm a librarian, and I'm located in the Glenrose Rehabilitation Hospital.
And I'm Marcus Vaska. I'm also a librarian. I work with library services with Erica, and I'm based in Calgary out of the Arthur Child Cancer Centre.
So I wanted to note that there is quite a bit of info on this topic, and so I will apologize in advance if we run into the question portion, but Marcus and I can stay after the session, and please just also take this as an invitation to reach out to us or anyone at Library Services for further discussions on this topic or really any of your library needs. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So just some general housekeeping. So again, welcome to our series. We're so happy to have you with us today. And just note that this session will be recorded and made available on the Library Services website at a later date. But no attendee information will be in the recording, none of your names, and if you have anything in the chat, it won't be in the recording. And we encourage your questions on this topic. Feel free to add them to the chat box as we go through the session. Time permitting, we'll have a short Q&A following the presentation, and then reach out to us at any time with questions. And just a note that at the end of the session, my colleague Josette will be sharing a link to our survey, and we really appreciate your feedback on these sessions so that we can make them more useful for you. Okay, so this is just a very broad overview of what we'll be talking about today. Mainly, what are predatory publishers and why we should be wary of them. A little information about the related topic of paper mills. Marcus will be going over some tips on how to spot a predatory publisher. And then a short intro on how AI might impact publishing and predatory publishing specifically going forward. Okay, so before we dive into our content, I thought it might be useful to think about some kind of fundamentals of publishing and why it exists. So why do authors publish? Academic journals have long played an important role in how researchers share knowledge, how other researchers build upon this knowledge, and how it is translated into practice. Publication is also important for researchers to gain recognition for their work and advance their careers. So publishing is important to individual researchers, but also to society as a whole. But with like publishing being important, what are some challenges? And anyone who published will tell you that publishing your findings is not easy. Many journals have low acceptance rates, so authors face many rejections. Authors can face rounds of requested revisions and formatting changes. There is a significant lag time from submission to publication, and so just all in all, there are a lot of hurdles in academic publishing, and it can be a very frustrating process. What about for the reader? So for the reader, one big challenge is paywalls to accessing the content, so financial barriers. And for this financial barrier, open access is used as a legitimate solution. So open access is a publishing model where authors pay publication fees, and then the research is openly available to all readers. So in this session, we will see how predatory journals prey upon frustrated authors and fraudulently use the open access model to profit in unscrupulous ways. Next slide. Okay, so publishers have responsibilities in the communication of knowledge, mainly quality control via peer review and editorial work, and findability and preservation of the resulting documents via indexing and archiving. So what are predatory journals? Predatory publishers, they take open access publication fees without performing advertised services, such as archiving, indexing, or quality control. They use deceptive techniques such as fake editorial boards or fake journal metrics to appear legitimate. So, all in all, predatory publishers abdicate their responsibilities while taking open access money. Next slide. So, why is this an issue? Lack of peer review means low quality or flawed scientific information is published under like the false veneer of reputable information. And this information can be used in further research or practice. It wastes resources that could be used for scientific discovery and legitimate information dissemination, and can increase distrust in science by muddying the scientific body. So that's something that we definitely do not need. From the author's perspective, authors can lose their intellectual property as they often agree to hand over their copyright to these journals, and that means they cannot republish in a legitimate journal. The articles can be unfindable, so authors are not even able to cite this work or put it on their CV, even if they wanted to. And mostly, having their work published without appropriate quality control, so potentially side by side with junk science, can harm the author's reputation. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Marcus is going to go through some practical tools later in the presentation, but just to kind of round out our definition, what does a predatory journal look like? So it looks like aggressive email campaigns that are like overly flattering and they have much urgency, very quick turnaround. So this seems nice, but it's not realistic with, the editorial and peer review process. Editorial boards may be filled with fake names or researchers that are unaware they are listed. It's not indexed in databases like PubMed, but it may list social networking sites like ResearchGate, places where anyone can deposit their papers. And they use templates of they can use templates of a similar journal. So you'll use a name very similar to a reputable journal, and this is called a hijacked journal. So it's a specific kind of flavor of predatory publishing. Okay, next slide. So just a little bit of information about hijacked journals. They mimic legitimate journals, like we said, by adopting their titles and or other metadata. And usually hijacked journals mirror legitimate journals without permission, but at rare times, publishers will buy the rights to a legitimate journal, but continue the publication under considerably less stringent publishing protocols. And just on this slide, I've linked to the Hijacked Journal Checker. It is a list created by a researcher in partnership with Retraction Watch. And they have identified journals that appear to be hijacked journals. So just a little resource for you. Next slide. Okay, so just a little segue. So just when we thought we had enough to worry about, along comes Larry. And Larry the cat story, it is really the story of two misconduct sleuths. They saw an advertisement on Facebook that they could boost their citation counts via this advertised service. So, and the ad included links to authors who had used them before. So the sleuths went in and figured out how this service worked. And they did an experiment using the service's approach, which was uploading fake or nonsense papers into ResearchGate. That was that social media site I mentioned earlier. And then they just waited for Google Scholar to automatically upload the data from ResearchGate. And then voila, our guy Larry had 132 citations and became the world's most cited cat. So they were very open about their little adventure. And Google Scholar removed Larry's profile, so he is not currently on the prowl. But this points to another issue that we wanted to highlight. Fake papers can easily be produced and infiltrate the scholarly body. Next slide. our misconduct sleuths and Larry, they produce their own fake papers, but paper mills are fraudulent organizations that make money by writing fake manuscripts and offering authorship slots for sale to academic customers. So this is a larger problem than just kind of individual academic misconduct. Next slide. So are paper mills a big problem? Is it just a kind of a small niche problem? Is it something we need to be thinking about? And over the summer, I read this PNAS study, and they found that certain predatory publishers and paper mills are coordinating. And so as these faux papers are discovered, the journals can be de-indexed. So databases such as PubMed or Scopus, they remove these journals from their databases. But paper mills, they found in this study that they just kind of hop to another journal. So de-indexing is not fully solving the problem. And this quote from the paper, it kind of just perked my ears. It said, the number of fraudulent publications is growing at a rate far exceeding the growth of legitimate publications. And so for a librarian, that is info perfect for spooky season, and just kind of indicating that this is a growing issue that we will have to keep on our radar, whether we are an author or a reader. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Marcus. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Erica. So before we start this next demo session of a few tools, just a quick disclaimer. We will show you some common checklists and tools that are used to identify predatory journals, publishers, as well as conferences. But just a disclaimer, there's no surefire 100% guaranteed way to identify each and every predatory journal that's out there. Just more and more appear on a growing basis, but hopefully some of these tools will enable you to make the few decisions. So going back to a few slides earlier, Erica mentioned some of the aggressive predatory tactics that may lure you in. So a few months ago, I was contacted by an email like that. Right, they said in their sentence, in their subject line, "Dear esteemed colleague, Dr. Vaska," and it was all from Impact Journals and was created by Ramapsyson Press, which I'd never heard of. So I thought, well, let's see how I can investigate whether or not this is a credible institution, a credible journal that I could perhaps publish in. And so what I used up on the screen is a common checklist that's known as Think, Check, and Submit. It actually determines the credibility of a journal. It's been translated in more than 50 languages, and you can download the checklist and your results. So I'm just going to quickly here share on my other screen right here, and we can just sort of walk through. So this should be appearing on everyone's screen now. So this is indeed the site, and in your slide deck, you have all the links as well that anything we go over today. So you can download a copy of the checklist. It's available in more than 50 languages. But the premise of Think, Check, Submit is almost internal questions to ask yourself if you're submitting the research to a trusted journal. Is it the right journal for your work? And it goes through a few categories through here. You can check. So look at the reference list. Have you heard of the journal before? Can you identify the publisher? Is there a peer review process? Is there an index for the articles? Is it dedicated? If there are any fees, are they charged? Any guidelines, etc. And really, what is the publisher's stake? Are they recognized in the current industry? Are they sort of leading standards, etc.? And then once you go through all of those points here, you actually can click Submit and download your results. And as it says through here, really only if you can answer yes to most of the questions above, then that can really determine whether or not you want to actually submit to that journal. So that is just a unique like that aspect through here of Think, Check, Submit. One of the key tools that way that actually works through for selecting like that your journals. So once we've gone through here, a little bit now on blacklists, safelists, and watchlists. So a blacklist would be a list that the actual journals, publishers are explicitly denied access. Like they've been identified as a key sort of really caution that you have to take through here. Whereas we have sort of watch lists, they're a little bit more curated like that. They might be sort of predatory based on some of those think, check, submit, and other guidelines. So it's sort of kind of use your own judgment call. Versus safe lists, those are actual curated lists of scholarly journals or publishers, and they've met certain criteria like that from the institution. With a caution, though, for all of these lists, there are limitations. Beale's list, so Beale was a librarian, Jeffrey Beale, that was credited with creating one of the first lists of predatory journals almost 2 decades ago. There are challenges. Some of these lists are incomplete. They might be outdated like that. And as well, they often don't have a peer review or a safeguarding mechanism. So to combat that, earlier this year, in spring of 2025, a new organization, sort of a new unit called the Predatory Journals Team was formed. And as they say, we are an organization made up of volunteer researchers who have been harmed by predatory publishers. So everyone that's part of this group has actually experienced predatory publishing, so they can share firsthand knowledge. And they want to help researchers identify trusted journals and publishers for their research. They are anonymous. They have to be, as they say, because they have been sued by companies who've been quite aggressive, so they've really had to, they still want to get the word out there, but they remain anonymous for that purpose. And they've currently looked at 2,780 journals and 1,363 publishers that they've identified as predatory. So if we take a quick look again, just to go through. So this is the list, and yes, the big bad wolf is there as kind of their icon and motto. But what they have for their list is you can actually see a series of publishers or a series of journals, and you can actually download the entire, so you've got an Excel list right through there that you can download alphabetically A to Z. And this is updated quite frequently. Even from a few months ago, they've added journals. Not every journal can be captured, but this is quite a definitive updated list like that I'd highly recommend. They also have a feature on any potential sort of organizations or publishers. So some on the call today may have heard of MDPI, or the Molecular Diversity Preservation International. So they've actually been identified as a predatory publication list according to this company. So just interesting as well, just to see the predatory journals list. So back to our slides once more. So we've talked about we have the predatory journals. So now is the aspect, well, what about conferences? Because conferences as well, there's a known conference that's known as the Gavin Conference, which is privately held. It's based out of Illinois. They've been identified as predatory. They often exploit a lot of academic researchers solely for profit. And there's a lot of concerns for legitimacy, deceptive practices, lack of integrity, and so on. So how do we actually determine like that a predatory conference? So we had think, check, submit for our journals. Well, we have think, check, and attend for our predatory conferences. So just to give a quick little sense through here, when you go into think, check, attend, what's quite unique is they have what's called as a conference checker. So it's actually a little questionnaire, a survey. You can go through and it asks you if you're aware of the society. Can you identify the venue? What about the fees? Are they clear for registration? Who are the sponsors? Did you look at their conference website? What about attendance, location? Is there a clear agenda when the conference is actually being held? What about the agenda? Any conference proceedings or papers? What about the editorial committee like that? Is the actual scope, does it fit a core interest field or not? And is the editorial control? And once you put in yes or no, you can actually put in the title of the conference, the website, your name and email, and then you submit it to the conference checker, and they will actually contact and get back with you with a little analysis based on their years of experience, whether or not that conference can be deemed suitable that you can actually submit to or think for your research, because it's all the research integrity that is really a key aspect through here. So now that we've gone through a little bit about think, check, submit, and think, check, attend for our journals and our predatory conferences, we're going to launch into the last little part. Just before we do, I do have this little graphic just up on the screen through here. This is from an organization in Australia, and they've actually put together an alphabetical A to Z list. So it's an additional more details about some of the key elements to watch for if you're submitting to a conference, whether or not to determine it's predatory or not. And then we go into the whole idea of AI. And so a couple of things to think of. The first is, will AI increase predatory publishing? So up on the screen right now is a citation by Kendall, an article that raises concern a lot about large language models. So those are advanced artificial intelligence systems that are trained on enormous amounts of data to understand, generate, and process language. Some of the generative AI programs, so even Perplexity, Microsoft Copilot, of course, ChatGPT that have been around. There's quite a bit of concern with that. Is it ethical? Abuse, we talked about, or Erica talked about the paper mill industry before. That can't be overemphasized. And really the detection of this text is the responsibility of editors and journals. So publishers really need to be aware whether they use some of the tools we mentioned today, get in contact with the Predatory Journals organization as well, just to really determine, because that is a concern. And yet, on the other hand, we can also use AI tools to help identify predatory publishers. So an article was actually just published a few months ago by Nadaf and colleagues that has now been listed in PubMed, and they have hundreds of suspicious journals flagged by a new AI screening tool. This is something that's right new on the market. It's called Reviewer Zero. It's an AI model that was trained on 12,869 journals from the DOAJ, or the Directory of Open Access Journals. And it was compared against unpaywall, so the open source journals that are out there. It tried to identify predatory journals. Yes, there were some contentious issues with open access, the fees that are actually charged to publish open access and make research available to all. And then looking at some of the findings from Reviewer Zero. So you can see over 15,000 open access journals were scrutinized. They identified a little over 1,400 as questionable, so about 9.5%. And then it's interesting because 345 of those were actually mistakenly flagged. So there's sort of something to be said that no matter what you have, all of the machines, it kind of goes to the first quote I have on the slide, AI does indeed sometimes make mistakes. So a human expert should always still be part of the vetting process. It's interesting too also to think if AI tools, maybe they go a little bit too far. What about sort of biased considerations, non-English language journals? Sometimes journal editors are ranked by institutional affiliation. Redacted journals, that can be really interesting. Sometimes some of the studies that we read in the presentation today say up to 10% of the time, redacted journals can appear in these automated AI tools. So really something to think of. And also there's a practice that unfortunately with predatory journals is gaining more and more traction. The same article is published in more than one journal. So you may have a journal in like a JAMA or a Journal of Clinical Oncology, a reputable journal, and then some of the omics groups or the impact journals, as I shared before, where something really puts the credibility of the tools into question. So this is just a a quick snapshot today of a little bit of what we spoke with predatory journals, some of the impacts, the AI tools. We do have all our references listed at the end in the slide deck, as well as a few additional resources, so other potential web guides or subject guides that discuss from academic institutions and from the government on predatory journals. So that concludes our session today. I think we've got about 5 or 6 minutes or so if there's any questions at all. But thank you on behalf of Eric and myself. Thank you for attending and listening in today.